Here we go. So yeah, thank you again for the really good presentation. So the next one is from Andy Wilson from ImageStrat. It's a case study from the Beetaloo Sub-Basin, and the title is Borehole Image Features Map Depositional Environment Change in Mesoproterozoic Deltas. So I really look forward to your presentation, Andy, and the stage is yours.
Okay, thanks very much. So sorry this isn't about mud and its effect on imaging. Peter sent me an email and said, do you want to give a talk? And this is one I had available. So I'm hoping it's of interest to you. It is an interpretation talk, but I've got some really nice image examples, which I'm pretty sure many people won't have seen before. Okay, so I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors, Alex. Oh, can you see my PowerPoint? And can you see my cursor?
All good. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So co-authors Alex Côté, Brenton Richards, and Carl Altmann. This work was originally done for Origin. Excuse me, I'm recovering from COVID. Falcon is a JV with Origin. And then more recently, Tambourine bought the acreage, and so Tambourine now holds the IP. But at the time, this was done for Origin. So, okay, so just Tambourine have kindly given permission to present this, so please go check out Tambourine. They have the biggest acreage of in the Beetaloo and are very busy getting that underway. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Beetaloo Sub-Basin just to get us all on the same page, and the situation in the Mesoproterozoic. And then I'm going to talk about what I call image features, and I'll be really interested to hear what the people, what terminology other people use for these things, and in particular looking at syneresis crack fills and gutter cast fills, which are beautifully imaged in this example. And then we're going to see how those particular features fit in with our Faes analysis and how that's helpful. This work was first presented in 2019 at the EAG Borehole Geology Workshop in Perth. I've added a few more bits and bobs since then, but I'm not sure that quite made it over to Europe and America. So hopefully this will be new to some people. So the Beetaloo Basin is in the Northern Territory. It's a sub-basin of the Greater MacArthur Basin. It essentially it's thought to be a shallow marine to shelf environment that originated as an epicontinental platform due to lithostatic extension and sagging, or an intracratonic ramp, but really nobody fully understands this. We're going to be looking at data from Tanumbirini 1, well Tanumbirini 1, Beetaloo West 1, Kalala South 1, and Mungie Northwest 1, and Birdham Creek. And broadly speaking, our system is migrating to the northwest. So this is sort of proximal down here and distal over there. We're going to be looking at the Valkyrie and Maroke sandstone formations, and together these make up the Maroke Delta, which is Mesoproterozoic. These were later intruded by dolerite dikes and sills, really nice examples again in this basin, but these were much later on. And when we look at the gross sort of architecture, you'll most often see these kind of very layer cake models. So we're looking from this upper Valkyrie here into the Maroke sandstone. And that's really because land seismic really is very poor at resolving structure. So just to get you in the right mind here. So this is a slide I borrowed from Elizabeth Baruch. She's an Origin energy geologist, or was. I think she's still there actually, or she may have gone to Tambourine. But in the Mesoproterozoic, basically the only life we had was bacteria. And so we had bacterial mats and stromatolite type forms, but there were no land plants, and along with sort of limited chemical weathering, this meant we had no soils. Also meant that we had no burrowing organisms. So really what that means is that all the sedimentary structures are left as they were deposited, which is just fantastic. And people should do more research on this. But it also means with not having plants, we don't have anything to stabilize our fluvial systems. And so broadly speaking, most fluvial systems in this time period were at least interpreted to be braided river systems, which is kind of important. And I'll come on to a little bit more about depositional environment in a minute. So image features. So essentially what I'm talking about here are things that are smaller than the borehole diameter, which means we can't pick them with dips, which is, one of the two main ways that we identify things on images when we're doing qualitative work. And they're not adequately characterized by zoning as you would, for example, Faes or structural zonation and that kind of thing. So instead, and I really would be curious to know, especially from some of our more experienced people, what, if anyone has done anything with these sort of things before, because I found very limited work on image features in the literature. But anyway, so we would record these things with depth markers, with point markers, so we know the depth that they occur at. And in this talk, I'm going to be talking about syneresis crack fills and gutter casts. So first example, syneresis crack fills. Basically, these are this is where you have mud, which exists in a saline environment, so a sort of marine saline environment. And when you introduce brackish or low salinity water to the mud, it expels water and cracks, and you get these syneresis cracks. And so this is what they look like on a bedding plane, these sort of incomplete arrays. And in core, they look like these sort of squiggly sand-filled features most frequently, and squiggly because of compaction later on. But they were mud cracks, which were then filled with sand, and those mud cracks were formed by this fluctuating salinity. So this is what we teach our students. These are nice examples from textbooks. Here's some examples from the Beetaloo. You can see these exactly the same features. Interestingly, they occur in some layers and not all, indicating that these conditions are episodic. They also have small to sort of larger forms. And here's some examples of what they look like in some of the Schlumberger FMI images we have. So you can see that they're these brighter, more resistive little fingers poking down from resistive beds into these more conductive beds. From calibration with core, you can look on this image on the right and you can see that the yellow is sand, green are kind of silts, and these sort of grays are mudstones. So it's these sand-filled features poking down into these mud layers, and they only occur where we have this sort of heterolytics, essentially. So that's one type of feature. Just to show you that we're mapping the same features across the basin. This is Tannabarini, that's where those examples I just showed you are from. Amungi Northwest, less good image, but you can see the same features. Here are the markers representing those beds which are showing those features. Beetaloo West in the West 1, which is in the southwest. Again, you can see the same sort of features. Kalala South, which is in the north, and you can see the same sort of features again. Now, there are other features in these wells which have similar gross morphologies, but are much bigger. And here's some beautiful examples of some injectites. One of the main differences is that they form pairs that are mirrored. You can sort of see this is a sheet injectite here. And you can sort of see there's a sort of mirror image of each other. There's another one here. And then there's sort of smaller ones, more convoluted ones here, which you can pretty much fit the dip through if you, if you really had to. And if you really squint hard, you can maybe imagine that there's some layering in this sandstone bed, which reflects some kind of sandstone extrusion at the seafloor. So we perhaps, if we use our imagination, could come up with some kind of timing. But the point of showing this is that, yes, we know there are injectites and other features. We know they don't look the same as this, and so we know we're mapping the same thing. Now, the other feature is these gutter casts. And I really think you should go look at this Collins et al. Paper, which is the paper that defines the storm flood delta, which I'm going to talk about later. Full reference this at the end of this. But effectively, the gutter casts are these erosionally based linear gutter features, which are filled with all kinds of different fills, from just mudstone to heterolithics to sandy bed forms, which show, really crucially, hummocky cross-stratification and swaley cross-stratification, which places them in the sort of lower shore face of storm wave based. And these things occur in arrays like this. Some are isolated, some are compound, some have attached sheet sandstones, but they're basically produced by storm flood hyperpignal rip currents in the above storm wave based environment. So essentially when you have a storm, it churns up your shore face, but at the same time it floods your river valleys, and those pulses of river flooding cascade down the shelf and down the slope and cut these channels that are then filled later on. This is an example of what they look like in one of our images. And in many cases, you can actually see the thelwork, so the deepest point of the channels can actually be mapped, and so you can actually figure out which way these things are going. But you can see this is a sandfield example. There's a couple of other little ones in here. This is what they look like in core in the Beetaloo, and typically they have this differential compaction appearance with this sort of undercutting and some brittles or semi-brittle damage. And you can see here this one is filled with a hummocky cross-stratification, and that's what it looked like on the equivalent scale. I'll just show you some more examples. So we were at Amungi Northwest here. There's that example we were just looking at. Here's one from Tenebrarini, a nicer image, just showing some of the key features. You can see this truncated erosional base, beautiful. Then you can see this laminated fill in this example that's fining upwards. And then typically they're draped with a mud layer. You can see there's this sort of darker mud layer on many of these. Beetaloo West example, this is a really nice, nicely scoured with a asymmetrical graded fill, going from sand into silt and then with a mud cap. And here's an example from the Northwest in Kolala South. Again, same sort of deal. And again, we can map these thalwegs. And in fact, we can see the whole, so let's go back a minute. This whole range of fills that was documented at outcrop, we can see in the Beetaloo Basin, from mud-filled scours, essentially, through to underfilled with sand. You can see here it's not quite got to the top of that incision, to underfilled to bankful. So you can see that this sand has filled almost to the top and then to the top here, to overtopping, forming with a sheet sand, larger sheet sand with graded fill. And here's one of those really odd, like undercutting type gutters. And then compound and large attached sheets. So we've got the full spectrum. Anyway, and just as an aside, we have the beautiful spectrum of soft sediment deformation in this well, all the way from, on the left here, sort of plastic deformation, plastic and then brittle deformation. You see these tension cracks around the edge of this fold here, and this has been snapped off here, to folded, and then we start to lose the sort of coherency of the material, and it splits into a debrite where we've got floating parts of less deformed material in this sort of debrite, and then it seems to form this slump cap, and then it almost becomes just a homogeneous medium. But like this area is beautiful for all these different types of features, but I just had to show that. Anyway, so Faes analysis. So where do these features we've been talking about fit into our sort of standard Faes analysis? So we weren't the first to study this, and these various authors have been here before. Some of them recognized gutter casts and associated them with the distal delta front, which is the same as we do. They didn't report it in here. They also saw syneresis cracks. Roderick Johns, working with Santos, did a fantastic study. Their model here really shows the sort of dominance of storm processes in the marine realm, whereas other workers saw the importance of the fluvial component. But really what these all sort of lacked was that and that appreciation from the Collins et al. Work that along with any storm event, we have wave reworking on the shore face, but we also have storm effects on the fluvial system that pumps water in from the land and produces a second set of characteristics in the deposit. So the best way to think about this is we all understand how shore face processes produce a nice graded shore face profile, but there's this nice analog that I found, which is the Sandow Plains in the south of Iceland. I suspect many people have been here, but essentially there's very little vegetation here, and it's broadly braided rivers. But because you get these glacial outburst floods, they kind of simulate our storm flooding of our rivers, along with our storm churning at the shore face. And it really nicely illustrates that, you know, probably what we were seeing in this delta is a barrier shore face, but then during these big storm events, these got punctuated by really sediment-laden waters, which pushed through the beach barrier and pumped all this sediment-laden fresh water down the delta slope, forming the syneresis cracks, forming the gutters, and that really and actually here you can see aggradation of that shoreline as part of this delta progradation. So this is what we think is going on, rather than, which reflects the Collins et al. Work, rather than just a simple wave-dominated delta. Anyway, so I want to show you now how these fit into our Faes analysis. Now, as I'm sure some people in this group have undertaken Faes analysis before, and I maybe appreciate how long it can take. I think the key outcome of this kind of work is that once you've established that understanding, then mapping these features, these syneresis cracks and these gutters, can actually, in this particular environment, allow us to very rapidly differentiate those different sub-environments. Anyway, so this is our box model, and here are the wells in their geographic location. North is this way, so the system is prograding towards us as we view it. Really starting in the shale. This is the sea shale, which is one of the economic targets. It's very high in organic carbon, so it has a really high gamma ray signal, but effectively it's laminated muds, and neither gutters or syneresis crack fills exist here. Above this is a bunch of massive sandstones with slumps and heterolithics, which we interpret to be base of slope kind of turbidite fans. These start to see the gutter cast fills appearing, but we're not seeing any syneresis cracks fills, interestingly. So they seem to appear at the base of a slope because we're inferring slope from the presence of these gutters, but also we see the increase in slope in the dip data. Then as we go up into the offshore sort of pro-delta area, we're still seeing the gutters, we're seeing an increase in slope, but we're seeing a lot more heterolithics and an awful lot of slumps in this region. And interesting, some of the slumps contain syneresis crack fills, but the actual formation in between them don't, so we don't see those. It's only really where we get into the base of this Maroc sandstone here that we start to see these syneresis cracks appearing in predominantly heterolithics, and the gutter casts are still with us at that point, as we saw previously. So we think what this means is that we're looking like almost like a dilution effect. So when we're a little bit deeper down, or any of these storm-derived flows are being diluted by marine water, and so they still have erosive capacity, but don't have that low salinity, which would promote syneresis crack formation. But as we become shallower, we're maintaining that salinity as well as the ability to erode, and so that's why we're seeing our syneresis cracks here. And then as we get into basically the proximal delta front, it's all sandstones anyway, so there's no mudstone to develop syneresis cracks or preserve gutters, so it just doesn't appear there because it's not facies that can hold it. So that's where these things exist, but there's a sort of further dimension. What we did then was look at the abundance, so the frequency of these fills in 10-meter bins, abundance of these features with depth, and these are for the wells in the region. And what we found was that not only do gutter casts appear first and then syneresis cracks appear later, which is what we've just seen, but actually the abundance peak in the gutter casts appears first up section, and then the abundance peak in the syneresis crack fills appears second up section, and that's a common trend across. So really, this is the first time I think anyone's seen anything like this, as far as I'm aware from speaking to quite a few of the sedimentologists. Probably because people haven't studied these features in detail, but also because of the uniqueness of our image log data sets that really are underexploited for research. So this is kind of a research outcome that was just really cool. And I should have said this earlier, like we did our normal Faes analysis, producing all these box models and all our Faes association intervals, but we got to the end of that and they were like, yeah, we're still really interested in these little annoying small scale features. Let's just go and see what we can find. And so actually it only took maybe 2 or 3 hours per well to map these things out, because it's click, 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 click as you see it. And just doing that very rapidly across these 4 wells just showed that seems to be a repeatable trend. So anyway, what that means is that we can basically subdivide our Maroc delta into these 5 zones based on the presence or absence of these 2 features, and in combination with the gamma ray values, we can very quickly subdivide our delta into proximal delta, distal delta, offshore, and then our turbidite fans. And really, if you were to think about that, just looking at the gamma ray, you'd be hard pressed to find that boundary. This one may be easier to guess, but and this one is perhaps not too difficult too. But certainly finding these boundaries allowed us to have an independent measure to do that. So that was kind of a really cool result. If you want to know more, there is an extended abstract. You can follow this link, and I wonder if Peter can put that in the comments on the YouTube channel, or just email me and find out about that. Here's the reference list, and yeah, I recommend you go and have a look at that Collins et al. Paper if you want to know more about this coupled storm flood model. And thank you very much. I hope that was interesting.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was really interesting. Very good examples. Fantastic images. Are there any questions from the audience? Tegman, maybe you can help me because I can't see the chat really. So if there are any questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
I certainly would be interested to.
It's an apology for someone leaving. That's all.
I think Brice is raising his hand.
Oh yes, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, hi, Brice in Equinor. Just a question. What do you do with this observation after? Is it that you target the zone, or can you say a little bit more of what you do once you have been using that? Would you identify this when you drill the LWD well, or?
No, it's good. It's a good point. Yeah, I think really it was a research question. You know, what are these things? How are they distributed? It had real no huge economic value at this point. I mean, the Merope Delta does have, I think it does have regions of permeability which could host hydrocarbons, but the main focus in this basin has been these high organic carbon shales. But really, I think from my background of being a sort of researcher, this was something that was like a bonus, which we could learn a little bit more. And I think understanding the depositional system, you know, helps us understand future interpretation of these sorts of deltas, because there are no modern examples for this. It may inform us about where syneresis cracks sit in modern deltas that are similar. And now, of course, with the overprint of soft sediment deformation with bioturbation, you can't see this. So I think it's more kind of a general useful result. I would be curious to know if anyone else has done work where they look at small scale features like this. I mean, I've seen some stuff done with Paleosol sort of things, but I mean, has anybody used point features for any projects before and come up with useful results?
Yeah, sorry, no. This is Shido Yang. Actually, yeah, we done some kind of a similar job, but not like you know, very detailedly, and especially focus on the shell. Yeah, we do have the similar answer delivery for this kind of interpretation. Yeah, okay. But however, yeah, I would like to have the further discussion with you, and because we have some kind of new methodology and to try to achieve this kind of feature analysis based on the texture feature from image, and very quickly from some AI, some kind of modeling, some stuff. Yeah, I would like to discuss with you further.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that offline. Thank you.
Roberto is raising his hands for another question.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Very interesting presentation. Thanks a lot. Roberto Berto from INI, Italy. I have a question about the approach in terms of Faes analysis that you used. What you merge was related with gamma and high detailed feature that you show, and something else in the building of the Faes, or what? Did you use other kind of well data?
Yeah, so the Faes analysis was principally carried out on the high resolution FMI images, which are brilliant over here. But we also use well logs just to classify bulk lithology, of course, and we look for, you know, we use the caliper data to look for image quality issues and things like that. But yeah, because it's such good quality and this formation is fully cemented, there's only a very few intervals in the sandstones at the top of the Merope Delta which show any kind of conductivity due to infiltration. So it's almost like you can see the grain size just by looking at the resistivity, and it's that good. So it wasn't necessary to use anything else. Yeah. There are core available, but we didn't look at the core for this project.
Yeah, because for what I think in this case, trying to merge information coming from well data that have intrinsically a different vertical resolution, like the gamma and the high detailed feature. Sometimes it could be, for our experience, a good approach, try to use algorithm working on the detailed feature, the high resolution feature, to try to identify the main change point. For example, in our experience, we use the so-called PELT algorithm that is able also just changing the perspective, no? To work also on fracture that are at the end of the story point data, and the problem is not so different for what we show in terms of frequency of these phenomena. An approach could be try to upscale a little bit that kind of boxed curve that you show. Is something that we use sometimes to merge the different kind of data at different vertical resolution to build, to go on with the Faes analysis. You understand what I mean?
Yes, yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very
and
much.
This is
for your comment.
Yeah, I have a comment from my point of view. You show, and coming back to the topic of this day together, no, related with the use of the impact of MUD on Borehole image analysis and interpretation. What you show was fantastic in terms of resolution, but do you think that changing the MUD, I mean, also working in LWD or in wireline mode, this kind of approach and high-level analysis was possible in a similar way? For example, moving to a drilling strategy using all-base MUD?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've not seen, there are some oil-based mud images, I mean, Peter will know better than this, that are coming out that are getting better and better. So I shouldn't think it was far off where we can do something similar. But yeah, certainly look out for that. But thank you very much for your interest. I'll hand back over.
All right, great. There's one more question from Sanjeev.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. My quick question is regarding the unconventional resources. Could you mention few implications of this technique?
I guess so. This particular example it helps us establish the gross depositional environment, and it has actually led to very interesting discussion about the origin of the shales themselves. Are they derived from the delta, or are they derived from somewhere else? And that's still unresolved. But I think also, you know, if we were to go and, well, when we look at the dip data ourselves, we can actually see differences in dip between the laminated shales that form most of the reservoirs and these different intervals. And by using, from a structural geology point of view, these images have been really useful in determining, and I can't say too much, you know, the differences in general aspect of these different shales. But in terms of the syneresis cracks in the gutters, I don't think they have any direct use apart from establishing the way that the delta has prograded out through time. That helps to identify sort of more proximal and distal parts of these shale horizons. Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Great. Well, then, thank you very much, Andy, for your talk. It was really interesting, good examples, and yeah, highly appreciate that your input.